Hello, and welcome back to the Irish Tennis Updates podcast. My name is Adam, your host. This week I've been chatting to Olwyn O'Toole. Olwyn has been involved in tennis in Ireland for a number of years and recently has started a foundation called the Access Tennis Foundation, which aims to make tennis accessible to as many people as possible around the country, especially those in underprivileged positions. For example, direct provision centres and emergency accommodation, just to name a couple. It really is amazing work that the Access Tennis Foundation is doing. It's in its early days at the moment, and Olwen has great plans and great visions for how it'll work in the future. I'd encourage you to listen through to the whole episode so you get to hear about all these plans and also about how you can help out a little bit as they go on, how you can get involved if you'd like that as well. I think it's a great episode. There's a lot to take from it. And without further ado, here we go. Here is Olwen O'Toole.
Olwyn, a big welcome. Thanks for coming on, and how are you doing?
I'm great. Well, thanks for having me. And I have to say, I love the wooden racket in the background there.
Oh, you can see it. Good. Listen, so yeah, the first thing I think we'll just talk about, Olwyn, is I know something that you've been working on for a while, and obviously you can give us lots more details on this, the Access Tennis Foundation. So I guess just start, where did this kind of idea come from? How did you kind of get the very, very first couple of steps in this kind of project?
Yeah. The evolution of this is kind of mad. Like I started as a tennis coach in 1997, and one of the first things that I did was build up a kind of a, I don't know if you'd call it a business, but I had about 200 students around the county of Sligo between working with Parks Tennis Ireland and various summer schools, and then Sligo Tennis Club allowed me to come in and use the courts, and wasn't so much tennis coaching as a kind of a babysitting service, because I was like a punt, as it was at the time, per hour, and the other coaches were serious qualified coaches who knew what they were doing. So but we built it up and built it up and built it up, and we had 200 or 300 kids really, really happily playing the game. And I suppose I tipped off then to college in Strawberry Hill in London to do sports science and biology. And when I came back at Christmas, having left a list of 280 kids, I think it was, to the club, only 4 kids were still involved when I came back. So I rang around a lot of the parents and I said, what's going on? They were just like, membership fees, coach fees, this, that, and whatever. And I think it was literally then that I just went, right, there's something wrong with the system here. And tennis needs to be accessible to absolutely everybody. So worked in London for a long time, worked with a company called Will to Win, where I learned an awful lot about schools tennis and an awful lot about different classes of society. We had a club in Regent's Park in central London we had the first city tennis club, I think, in London, which was supposed to be built on a park court, and it was supposed to be about getting people from all sorts of different walks of life into the same situation. And it didn't really work, because the kids from inner city London didn't want to be seen with the people from Primrose Hill and places like that. So it's been an amalgamation of all the things that I've learned down through the years, and I suppose my own personal feelings towards the class system and things like that. Where we are now is I've gotten to the point where I just think everybody should be able to access whatever sport it is that they want to access. And for me, it just happens that I love tennis and I see the benefits of it, and I'll go toe to toe with anybody to say that it can be completely inclusive, but we have to do an awful lot more than work in just clubs. Yeah. So that's where we are now. It's gone through a couple of different evolutions of community tennis coach businesses in North Connacht, and working for the Sports Partnership over in Richmond upon Thames in London, and lots of different things. So
yeah. So I guess from the very early days of your kind of time in tennis, it's sort of the ideas were kind of there, and I guess, as you said, it kind of maybe there are certain stages of it. So recently, I guess it was a lot more recently than like 1997, when I guess Access Tennis Foundation maybe started to become a thing. So when did it kind of take on that name and take on that kind of shape?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started working for Tennis Ireland in 2017. So up until then, I'd kind of been self-employed and running community tennis coaching programs, and I kind of wanted to get involved with Tennis Ireland because I feel like the governing body is obviously the best place to grow the sport. And we were working very closely on the schools program, and everything there was kind of, following on in the way that you would hope it would follow. But I kind of noticed that all of the community venues that I'd started, once I stopped doing them, nobody did them. And that's like 3,000 kids in North Connacht suddenly weren't playing tennis. So that was always in the back of my mind while I was working with Tennis Ireland. And so in 2020, during COVID, we kind of started having conversations, and I wanted to do the Access Tennis Foundation. And it was kind of just a case of, right, well, what Tennis Ireland are obviously the governing body, and they're in charge of everything tennis in Ireland. So what we wanted to do then was just to pick up on the places that maybe Tennis Ireland don't have the resources to deal with. So the likes of people in direct provision, and the likes of people in, in emergency accommodation, and people in really rural communities where you're never going to be able to get a coach to go out to physically do, a block of coaching or create a kind of a tennis club. So, I mean, I suppose we're kind of like the real bottom of the kind of the pyramid, and then you've got parks, tennis and schools and Tennis Ireland then making up the rest of the pyramid essentially.
Yeah, so then I guess since that sort of started and that kind of was your vision, how has the progress been in terms of setting it up and getting kind of actual tennis stuff started?
Tortuously slow and painful, thanks to COVID, as you can imagine. The kind of the business model that we have is to go into companies in the corporate world and to have coaches deliver corporate social responsibility days, which means you go in with a wellness package for their company. So it can be small, medium or large companies, and we charge them for the coach to go in. I create a package, the coach goes in. It can be either team building for their teams, it can be on site where we mark out mini tennis courts in a car park, or we can hire local community centres, or if there's a club that wants to get involved, we can, form the link between the business and the club. And then the kind of the profits that come in from the corporate social responsibility day are then redirected into what we call our impact fund. So our impact fund is, one-off sessions for people in emergency services, working with people in direct provision to try and get them to follow on in the progression path that we, but it, the big thing was we weren't able to get into companies, and we never wanted this to be a fundraising model, because, if you're begging and cap in hand all the time, there's no sustainability there. So the corporate stuff was knocked on the head, and it basically stopped all the progress. We've been piloting a lot of other projects in the background, and everything's been going really well. So it's just a case of getting the corporate stuff off the ground now. Having said that, we don't want to be fundraising and cap in hand all the time, but we are about to launch a Kickstarter campaign. So we'll be asking anybody that's involved in tennis in Ireland to just share the love. So it's literally just, if you have a few quid to spare, throw it into our impact fund. If you have a company that would like to do a corporate social wellness day, let us know. If you have skills, if you don't have the money because of COVID, we know that's happened to a lot of people. Perhaps you have a little bit of time that you'd like to volunteer, or perhaps you're brilliant on social media because we are rubbish. Lots of different things like that. So that will be the next kind of phase. So it's been slow, but we're ready to go now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. And I'll try and find some way to get people some information on that they can, people can get involved in whatever way. As you said, a few different ways people can get involved. So I'll try and make that easy.
We're working on the website as we speak. So hopefully that'll be
kind
of in the next week or so. We'll have that kind of up and ready, and the whole kind of package ready to go. Yeah.
Great. And so, I guess the next thing is, back to kind of the tennis side of it. So now you have done some tennis as well. Obviously, you're talking about the fundraising, kind of the logistics of it, but there has also been some tennis. So I guess talk about the tennis, and you mentioned Wasi there. So tell me a little bit about her story, I guess, that kind of maybe sums up almost what this is kind of about.
Yeah, the Wasi story is just like something that happened that I didn't expect, and it's been brilliant. So basically, we applied for a community integration grant through Tennis Ireland in 2019, and we got a few quid, and we started working with the local direct provision centre. But it became pretty apparent that we weren't going to be funneling a lot of new members into the tennis club as a result of it. So it falls between, do we have time as development officers to deal with that? So the Access Tennis Foundation, once the funding took over, I just took it on myself and started volunteering. So Wasi was one of the first people that I met. I don't know if you've ever been in a direct provision centre, but it can be quite daunting for anybody that's never walked through the doors, because I didn't know what I was walking into. I had no idea if anybody would have any English. But I've just done, I suppose, through my role with the Enjoy Tennis program, which is the Tennis Ireland. You had Liam on before, so I'm sure everybody knows about that. If they don't, Google Enjoy Tennis. So I kind of felt like even if there was a language barrier there, we'd be able to kind of work through it with all the different skills that we've learned down through the years. And walked into the Direct Vision Centre through our friends in the Sanctuary Runners, got us through the door. So Wasi was the first person I met, and she just kind of said, "Yeah, you're going to teach us tennis?" And I said, "Yeah, you're going to get a few people together," because I'd been through the doors to the reception area about 10 times and nobody would come out, nobody would talk to me. The guys in the reception were great, but you know, it just wasn't happening. We put up a sign, that didn't work.
Yeah.
So I get a few people. So next week I turned up with a bucket of red balls, mini tennis net. We booked an indoor hall, which is about the size of a half of badminton court. And we had 12 of the adults from the Direct Provision Centre landed down, all rallied by WASI. And we played and played and played throughout the winter. December 2020 started, it carried on. We were supposed to go outside then in a local primary school, which or a secondary school, which happens to have tennis courts right next door to the Direct Provision Centre. And we were all gung ho ready to go, and then COVID hit. So when COVID went on its merry little way and we were able to get back out on the courts, which was like August at that stage, I think, because there were so many restrictions, and I, for one, was not going to be the person that walked into a Direct Provision Centre with COVID and give it to 240 people. It's not going to happen. So when we did finally get back out on court, Wasi was like, look, if there's a load of kids, I've been playing with them throughout, you know, the whole way through. Can we do some kids sessions? So we combined with Parks Tennis that year, and it was excellent. So we had an integrated camp through Parks Tennis, and then we had all the adults coming down, and Wasi just helped out. She was there. She'd literally go from door to door in the Direct Provision Centre, putting on socks and shoes with the younger kids, walking them over, making sure everybody was safe. She got on court. She got really involved. She loves tennis. She just decided that it was her sport. And she, you know, she was just fabulous, brilliant with the kids. She'd walk them back to the Direct Provision Centre. You might have 3 or 4 coming in drips and drabs for an adult session. Next thing, Wasi lands back with like 20 people. She was just phenomenal. So I suppose through COVID, she got accepted into NUIG to do human rights. And yeah, and since then now she's out of the Direct Provision Centre, living in the community, living in Galway, didn't know anyone. So I rang up Galway Tennis Club and said, look, can we do some sort of a thing here where, you know, would you be happy for Wasi to be a member if we were to sort that out? And they said, absolutely no problem. We're an inclusive club. Everybody is welcome through our doors. So we went in, and I kind of happened to mention that she'd kind of assisted me during the summer with the kids, and they are overrun with students at the moment. So she's going to do her coaching. She's going to do the assistant coaching qualification in September when the new one comes out from Tennis Ireland, the new Play and Stay. And in the meantime, she's going to be doing a bit of work in the club, just basically helping out and assisting and getting a bit more experience. And I think Alan McCormick is the coach there, was on to me today saying he's going to take her under his wing and look after her. That's the dream, is just, you know, someone who, you know, you meet in the Direct Provision Centre, and then, you know, they're doing human rights and getting out there and maybe potentially even becoming a tennis coach and integrating into the club and getting to know people in the community. And look, at if Wasi is the only person who has a positive impact as a result of the Access Tennis Foundation, although we haven't really started yet, but if she is, then that's enough, you know. But there's lots more stories out there to come, I think.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's just an amazing story to hear, and as you kind of said there, that like it's probably it's almost hard to expect that kind of success. I think that's almost kind of like an exceptional story. That's, you know, you're not going to expect that every couple of months. But like, what do you see as the vision for the next, you know, year, couple of years, as it kind of starts to grow more and you get more and more kind of sessions and programs going around the place?
Yeah, so I'm just out of a director's meeting where I've been told to calm down. So that's a good start. They're doing their job already. I suppose the focus for me is Direct Provision is great, and it's something that we will focus on, but this is about access for absolutely everybody. And, you know, there's a lot of people in a lot of different situations in Ireland that can really benefit and be impacted by, you know, the Access Tennis Foundation. So I think the key areas that we're looking at this year are kind of rural regeneration. So where tennis doesn't exist, rocking in with our activator program, finding a couple of local activators, you know, empowering them to run sessions for people, kind of teenagers and adults is the market at the moment. I find that when you're trying to train kids in how to play tennis, you really do need a coach. So in the short term, it's about getting the adults to be able to show the kids how to maybe hit a few balls and bits and pieces like that, but also to show them how to run fun little community leagues and things like that. So we have this thing called Insta Tennis, where you literally turn up and in the space of 2 hours, you can teach absolutely anybody using modified equipment how to score, how to serve, how to rally, serve, rally and score, and how to set up leagues and how to keep it going. The emergency centres anything that we can do that's impactful. We've 45 coaches that have agreed to be ambassadors, and if any of them can even do 2 hours in an impact session, those aren't really about sustainability. It's more about getting rackets in hands and just taking them away from the situation they're in for an hour and putting a smile on their face. Because as we all know, if you can hit a few softballs across the net, it is pretty good for the old stress release. So I suppose rural activation, direct provision, and we're really going to try then and work on areas of deprivation, so inner city areas and places like that, by working with local kind of authority groups and resource centres and anything like that, just to try and just make a difference and just get things off the ground. So those are our kind of 3 main objectives now for the next year or so.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. And tell me, where, I know you obviously, as you said, started working for Tennis Ireland in 2017. So how is is that still going to continue? Are you just kind of more of a Access Tennis, just kind of being more of a full-time? How is Tennis Ireland fitting in with all of this for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, at Tennis Ireland is the governing body for the sport in Ireland. So Access Tennis hopefully will just be an added arm to Tennis Ireland, and potentially in the future maybe it'll become a part of Tennis Ireland. But at the moment, it's just the way it is easier to do it this way. So yeah, I work part-time for Tennis Ireland. The Access Tennis Foundation is kind of an aside, and yeah, hopefully continue to maintain my role with Tennis Ireland and amalgamate it all together. And hopefully in the long term we'll have a really good grassroots structure, a really good outreach program. I know Parks Tennis are doing absolutely phenomenal work, so that's something that I think there's plenty of scope to grow the whole lot together. And for just we're all about tennis in Ireland. That's the main thing. So
yeah. I guess it might be almost looking at a similar kind of path somewhat to enjoy tennis, which now is kind of very much a part of Tennis Ireland and run their way, kind of run by them. I mean, and kind of would be part of Tennis Ireland, and I guess that only has to help, right? It can only be good for what they're trying to do, and the same for Access Tennis.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at the Tennis Foundation over in the UK, and they started off as the Cliff Richard Foundation. They found their feet, and they became the British Tennis Foundation, and now they're amalgamated with the LTA. So
yeah, absolutely. And just, I guess, on Tennis Ireland and the work you do in Tennis Ireland as well, I guess a part of the Access Tennis is getting more people to kind of expose to tennis as possible. And is that sort of a similar sort of goal that you would have within Tennis Ireland? I know you do schools tennis, stuff like that. So is that sort of a kind of similar message that you'd kind of be at all the time?
Yeah, it all feeds in together. Like we talk about this tennis pyramid, and you've got Parks Tennis there for kids. It runs in Dublin all year round, but and Cork. And as a development officer in Connacht, I'm very focused on looking after my clubs, because that's my role. I'm club development officer, so I look after the Enjoy Tennis program in Connacht. I look after all the clubs in Connacht, leave all the performance stuff to the big boys. I'm really the bottom of the pyramid, and that's where I belong, and that's where I want to be. But yeah, I think we do need to really grow the sport in Ireland, across the board. And I think a bit of joined up thinking can just really absolutely explode kind of the grassroots stuff. So yeah, the schools program then is we've revamped the schools program. It's now a fully Tennis Ireland initiative. It's called the Club School Link, and what we do is we work with coaches to identify the clubs that will be interested in getting involved. We've 50 clubs this year, and what we do is we go in and we help the coach and the club to work through a toolkit. So we work through the SMART goals, we work through where the gaps are in their club membership and what they want to achieve, and then we come up with a small little strategy, and we go into the local primary and secondary schools and then try and feed kids straight back into the club or into the Parks venue if that's if that's an option. So that's the schools program, and yeah, it's all about grassroots, and it's just it's all about participation. And then kind of the development officers, then our role is to kind of ensure that people are then in the clubs and maintained within the clubs, and that clubs are doing things that are sustainable, such as we've got the youth program at the moment, which is about trying to make teenagers youth clubs within clubs. So that's something that is one of our priority kind of targets at the moment, because obviously we all know teenagers drop out, they get into junior cert, they have too much study, and then they can't, they tend to stay gone. So the schools program will really target transition years, and it will target kind of trying to get people back into the sport for the health benefits. I think that's something that we really don't market the sport as well as we could. It is one of the healthiest sports on so many levels, socially, physically, psychologically, emotionally, all the works like.
Yeah. And what do you think, I guess, from all of the different kind of angles that you come at this, what do you think are some of the biggest things in terms of growing participation and growing those grassroots levels kind of across the country? What do you see as some of the big things that we can do?
Rackets and hands. Get rackets in hands. We did, as the development team, we did a session up in the National Sports Centre there in Abbottstown, and we were one of about 40 sports in the main hall, and it was come one, come all, in you come, and we had 2 little mini tennis nets. It was every other sport was there. The 2 tennis courts, we had to rotate people on for 5 minutes and then push them off and take the next people on. We had the biggest line all day. And the reason for that is tennis, if you make it achievable, modify the game to red ball. Like for me, it's red ball for all to begin with. I think that adults, it's the tennis express method as well. Adults should always start with a red ball and be trained in how to, tap close to the net and push when they get a little bit further back, and then learn to hit in proper swing at the back of the court. But we should be progressing up through the balls. It shouldn't be, a red ball is for an under 8. That's just my opinion. Now the ITF might disagree, but anyway. Yeah, so I just think when you see the smiles on the faces and the queues and people leaving the queue, leaving the tennis court and then joining the back of the queue just so they can have another 5 minutes. I mean, the sport sells itself. If we have pop-up tennis in community centres, in church halls, in schools, out the back of tennis clubs, just put rackets in hands. That will grow the game and make it accessible.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant to hear. No, I love those kind of stories. And just a couple of last questions, Olwyn, for you. And I guess firstly, just back kind of to the Access Tennis Foundation. I know you kind of mentioned this before, but just to make it kind of really clear, what are the easiest main things people can do? I guess one is kind of financially, but apart from that, how can people get involved and help out?
One of the big things is just sharing the word, letting everybody know that we exist now. We're not going to be able to take on everything that we want to take on because obviously I'm part-time at this and the coaches are flooded with work at the moment. Yeah. But we will take on everything that we can. So if anybody is interested or wants to get involved in any way, whether you're an accountant and wants to give us your a bit of free hours, if you're into governance, whatever, just touch base. And if you have a company and you want to have a go at some corporate social responsibility days, brilliant, let us know. Yeah, and really just like and share the Facebook page. We will get to Twitter and Instagram at some point, but it's not my strong point. So there's a social media head out there that wants to give some time as well. We greatly appreciate that. Yeah, that's it. Obviously, when we do our Kickstarter campaign, do feel free to dig into the pockets and throw a few euros towards this because, any money that comes in from the Kickstarter campaign goes straight to impact sessions. So it goes direct to coaches, it goes direct to people in, not great circumstances. So
absolutely. And I'll make sure to leave email address, details and stuff kind of in the description. People can get in touch, and I know that'll hopefully even if a couple of people do, that's brilliant. And just a final question for you. What is your favorite thing about tennis?
Oh, I love a good wall. I was just thinking about this earlier on. Like I love tennis. I love, obviously. But I love that the smiles that it brings to people's faces. It's not really so much about me on the court, but I was remembering like being a kid, and I think it was Ty Glam. I had a couple of great coaches, John McHugh, Marceline Gordon, and I have to mention my old PE teacher, Fanula Burke, who told me I had to be a tennis coach because I was misbehaving in TY tennis. But anyway, I remember Ty Glam coming down, and it was revolutionary for me at the time. He showed me how to hit a few balls against a wall and to do a few different routines. And it just, I think we used to have one of the walls in the house, thankfully, is a wall with no windows, but it has nothing but these stupid stones, pebble dash, as was the style at the time. And I think I took every piece of pebble dash off that wall. So I don't know, I just love hitting balls against the wall.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's the simple things about tennis.
Yeah, I'm a simple person, Adam.
But Olwyn, I'm going to leave it there. A big thanks for coming on and just telling us all about Access Tennis, about the work that it's doing, the work that you have done and that you're still doing. I know it's really great stuff, and I hope it will continue to grow as you kind of see that it will, and all the best for it, and hopefully can help out in some ways as well as it goes on. So yeah, big thanks, and thanks for your time, and all the best.
Massive thanks to you and everything you're doing, trying to get the word of tennis out there. It can only grow.
Big thanks once again to Olwyn O'Toole for her time with this episode. Thank you as well for listening to this episode. I'd really encourage you to check out the description of this episode to get all the information about how you can get in touch, how you can help out. and get involved with the Access Tennis Foundation. I'm sure you'll agree that it's amazing work. It's a great cause to get involved with, and I'd encourage you to do so if you can at all. Thanks again for listening to this episode. Please do share it around to anybody else who you think might enjoy this episode or may be able to help out. Until next time, I've been Adam, and goodbye.